Well, what's going on, guys? 6:17 at night. It's still the 18th of November. It is still Wednesday. We're John C. I suppose I have to address this to the people who live in the San Fernando Valley. I guess for some of those posters, you probably don't think that I hadn't lived in the San Fernando Valley. Or maybe I'm just talking out of my ass when it comes after people posting of stuff that's closing down in the valley that it shouldn't affect me as much because I've been out of the damn politics for so long, or out of the valley for a long while. And the thing of it is, you're right. I have been out of the valley for a long while. My family immigrated down to California to a lovely place at one time called the San Fernando Valley, or just the Valley, back in 1968. We lived in a street called Van Owen, on the corner of Ethel and an apartment complex. That was on the northeast side. I attended school from kindergarten all the way through the 4th grade over at Coldwater until I had to move out of the area. So as the apartment, I lived in 2 units in that place. I also lived in a house a little further up the street on Van Owen, closer to Woodman, actually closer to Fulton, actually, which is no longer there because now it's another apartment building. But I understand they still had issues concerning about the public housing across the street. When I was living there, was a nice, ugly, old building. Oof. Just long-ass apartments. Long-ass chain. It's the ugliest damn thing I've ever seen. And very depressing, too. I know a lot of kids going over Coldwater, went over to that place. My brother, who was 8 years older than I was, he had attended school in Bell. Different circumstances. There are a lot of videos talking about this one, but still. And when he moved over to the San Fernando Valley, with my mother and me, he also finished up his elementary school education over at Coldwater and drove Mr. Holding absolutely mad. I think he spent about 2 or 3 year grades over there. Holden could not stand my brother for one damn minute. My brother had gotten into fights because everyone picked on him, and he picked on everybody else who picked on the poor and the weak, and the girls. He was basically a champion. Got his ass swatted too many damn times, or yelled at by Holding. They managed to graduate, though. And while he was going and completing his 6th grade education over at Coldwater, word came down from the LA Unified School District that there was supposed to be no more corporeal punishment, meaning teachers and principals could not beat the living crap out of students just for disciplinary action. Holding didn't care. He really didn't care. And he was going to punish my brother for another thing that my brother didn't do at the time. My brother just snapped the damn paddle in half, and he was going to go home. They had words. Holden called Ma. She was working over Sweetheart Cop at the time. And she talked to Holden, and she also talked to my brother. My brother saw the damn paperwork. Talked to my mother about it. They were on speakerphone. My brother went home, and then a short time later, LAPD showed up just to make sure my brother got home safe enough. And they received a phone call from Ma. As soon as they arrived, I had this uncanny habit. And she explained to them. And then they had to go over to Holden and explain the situation to him. Well, they found out about the damn paperwork. I'm surprised they didn't level charges on him. Well, the next thing I know is when I'm going over there, he had a conference with my mother at one time. Something happened over there. It wasn't my fault. Apparently I was the golden child. Holden told Ma, I said, "You're not comparing John to David." My brother was the junior, the mean little kid. Nightmare for Mr. Holden. I thought he was a strict disciplinarian, but I didn't have any issues with him. My brother did, though. Unfortunately, I couldn't complete my educational studies over at Coldwater Elementary. We had to move over to Arleta back in 1976. The house we lived in got bought, and we had to get moved out. I remember some of the stores they had over there: Canyon Drug, Laundromat, Deli, Market Basket. My brother and I were the holy terrors in that place, especially me. I wanted a little toy, I wanted something, I was going to go after it. Ma had a field day with me at one time, and when I was overreacting, she just left me alone in the hall, actually in the aisles, and said, "Anybody want to buy this child?" And she just walked away. If I didn't behave. But I'm surprised LAPD wasn't showing up. It drove management crazy, though, especially when I was in those kind of temper tantrums. Terrible twos or terrible threes, actually. But got a little bit older, shopping with my brother on occasions. I had to push a cart all the way from that place to home. I had to push the damn thing back. Collecting bottles and cans along the way, and we earned our soda money that way. Across the street from the Market Basket, Schwinn Bike Shop, my brother was a frequent visitor over there. But the neighborhood meeting place was Pub and Taco on Coldwater and Van Allen. The horrible thing about the area, though, was you go down the street to Victory, and it wasn't a drive-in that would drive people crazy, or a Pioneer Chicken at the time, a gas station on the corner. Oh, no. There was a doctor's office with a community hospital right across the street from, actually, about a few feet away from it. About 1 or 2 yards away from their entrance was the hospital. If I didn't behave enough with Dr. Marvin Stolpick over there, this doctor was going to be not tolerant with me. He sent me over to the hospital for the constant blood draws that I required all the damn time. Every time I was getting sick, if I didn't behave at a doctor's office, it would be in that particular place. They strapped my arm down and they stuck the long needle into my damn arm to get the blood out. I learned how to hate doctors with a passion, and anybody who dealt with the doctors. I should be grateful, eternally grateful for these guys for saving my ass, because one time Ma brought me in and I was so damn sick they had to put me in an oxygen tank for a long while. I had double the money, I didn't even realize it. Turned in the age of 4 years old. It really became a nightmare for me. There was a sharp-eared cardiologist who heard my heart. And that community hospital was the triage. The next thing I know, I'm being sent over to Cedars of Lebanon, which is now Scientology for the past 5 decades already. Cedars of Lebanon became my second home. Cracked open my chest. I still have the scar. 1970, age of 4 years old. He's got to have heart surgery, open heart, just to repair 3 mitral valves. And I died on him 3 times and came back to life 3 times. Since then, the doctors really became my worst nightmare. Because my mother was really on top of me all that time, trying to make sure I didn't get sick. And then when I did get to see Dr. Burton Fink, the pediatric cardiologist, who's going to be taking these damn staples out. I mean, talking huge honking staples right out of my damn chest. My brother and my mother were embarrassed as hell because I learned a hell of a lot of rotten language during that time. And I used it liberally. The doctor wasn't fazed because he heard worse. Every time the doctor's offices recorded my blood pressure since then, it was always rising. Because I always had that fear, I always had that pain, I always had that deep-seated memory. And always the mantra in my head, never trust a white lab coat, ever. Fight or flight, constant. And never got over it, never got past it. But I am grateful for those guys. Both of them are dead. I'd seen old Stopig about 15 years ago. Me and my brother did a last go through the San Fernando Valley and found Stopig moved over to Lancashire. Almost close to, actually it was on Magnolia, close to Lancashire, in a small office. He and Julie, his nurse, was over there. God, he looked old and ancient. He looked so old. And he was so happy to see both of us. He remembered mine. He remembered both of us. He remembered me. And remembered what kind of a pain in the ass my brother was, too. My family had attended church over at the First United Methodist Church where I got baptized. I grew up in that church. And I missed that place. Bob Eldman was an assistant pastor. John Nagel was there. But before him, before Nagel, there was Dr. Long, Robert Long. And he and Bob Eldman, actually, it was Dr. Nagel, that baptized me. So before, back in '76, my family had moved into a small house, and actually a little bit larger, ranch house actually, in Arleta, a street called Wingo, right by Beachy. Right below Osborne, across the street from a community church, and behind us was a Jewish synagogue. We were in territory that didn't exactly appreciate the color of our skin. Nor did they actually tolerate food stamps in the first place. I said before, I did videos on this one a long time ago. I went to Canterbury and completed 4th grade education over there, graduated out of there, and before I got into Pacoima Junior High, God, I didn't. I got bused over to Patrick Henry Junior High in Granada Hills, Northridge area. San Jose Street. Close to Granada Hills High. For one semester of 7th grade, that was my junior high. I had lost a lot of those books I had. Each year there was a school yearbook, and I lost those and moves. Sucked. But I graduated out of junior high in 1981. I was part of last grade, 9th. I was part of the Science-Stein Booster Club, ran by Al Squattrito, God rest his soul, and Mr. Nadell, Mr. Munch, and Mr. Goldsworthy. Nadell's still alive, Munch is still alive. Nadell and Munch are still alive. Squattrito passed away a few years back, and so had Goldsworthy. I miss those guys. Dr. Carpenter was the boys' vice president, actually, and counselor at the same time. Always called me John Cameron. Yeah, I remember a lot of teachers over at junior high by face. Recognized a lot of them. Mrs. Sigfist was graphics arts. Vanderford, oh God, I hated him. Kaplan, I loved. Mr. Robbins, I could deal with. Actually, Mr. Jacobs, I could deal with too. Robbins was in the first semester of 7th grade English class. I miss him. He was a good teacher too. Miss Haddad took over for the rest of the 7th grade, and I hated her ever since. But my family got rid of her. Unfortunately, she never came in with any credentials. She bullshitted her way into the damn school system, got a job over at Patrick Henry, and then tangled with my mother. My mother was heavy into the PTA during that time. You don't mess with my mother at that time. She was a force to be reckoned with the LA Unified at the time. I also lived in Granada Hills, 79 to 84. Well, it was 85. A street called McKeever, about 5 or 6 minute walk away from John F. Kennedy High School. 3rd level, building A, let's see, fist. No. Ms. Farmer, T.O.B., the old bride, they called her. Worse than that. But she was a tough English teacher. You had to love this lady, I swear. I was also in school within the school, Tyra Seymour, over there. First 2 years was an academic nightmare, but I was enjoying myself too much over there. I repeat the 11th grade, and then actually graduated in 1985. So yes, I am familiar with the San Fernando Valley. I remember the 1994 quake destroying a hell of a lot of buildings, including my beloved A building over at John F. Kennedy. Turned it into a 2nd level disaster zone, not to mention the rest of the campus. Not to mention Patrick Henry got changed over in every other building in this damn valley. We had the Air National Guard over at the Van Nuys Airport. Well, because of people freaking out left and right and putting political pressure on the local government, and not to mention the state government, the National Guard, who ran 2 particular units over there, the communications and the flight squadron, they had to move out. Left the buildings. I remember we had air shows like crazy. It was wonderful seeing those planes coming in. But back in the mid-90s, they stopped it. When the military moved out, they were phasing out the military air show, putting in the civilian stuff, and all the attendance dropped like crazy. The parking over at Van Nuys Airport was appalling, even during the air shows, but you had to deal with it, you had to suffer through it. But we still loved seeing those damn planes coming in and out, not to mention the damn Hercules. I tell you, watch by those damn things. About 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock. 5 o'clock, God, it's flying in and out like crazy. Sit here and walk to them. But then again, you had the constant air traffic of LAPD, LA Fire Department, not to mention the air traffic concerning that Burbank Airport and Van Nuys Airport, depending on which particular flight path you're living under. So yeah, it was a constant air show over there. You just kind of tuned out a little bit in your ears. And then again, there was also the ambulances, the fire engines, and the LAPD screaming their heads off left and right. Oh yeah, and the occasional gunshots that would happen in the area. Or maybe an occasional crime scene that actually had yellow tape all over the place with a tarp over the damn body. Oh yeah, I remember that too. David Restaurants, Rusty Hacienda on Lancashire, all above Van Owen. That place changed. Mutated into something else. Couldn't stand the taste, couldn't stand the atmosphere. My family said, forget it. We'll find another place. Brent's Delicatessen on Parthenia, sandwiched between Corbin and Nordhoff Street. Still here, it's still there. It's still delicious. Northridge Mall, before the earthquake tore it apart, actually had a movie theater in there and actually had a good times. And Baskin & Robbins. Not to mention a few other bookstores I loved until they went under. In 94 tore everything else apart of the damn place, redesigned it. And back a few years after the quake, I started working over at Macy's for about a year and a half. So yeah. Not to mention fires we had around the hillsides. Every summer, or close to the fire season, the hills were alive with fires in one section or another section or another section or another section or another section. And that wasn't bad enough. We had the monsoon floods. Remember those damn things? Every time we had El Nino kicking in, Sepulveda Dam would shut itself down. Burbank would close down. Victory would have issues. Van Owen clogged up with traffic. Woodley shut down. Havertors shut down. Balboa shut down. Balboa barely shut down. Not to mention, you'd see the flooding on damn news. Or how about the Rodney King verdict when everything else was going hell in a handbasket? Don't think I know my valley. Don't think I know about some of the stores I liked a lot. There was an arcade, Family Fun Arcade on Devonshire and Balboa. Stayed there for years. Gone. History. There was Circuit City on Devonshire and Balboa. I used to work there for 4 years. Gone. 94 quake took out the Granada Hills Community Hospital. Not to mention damaged a hell of a lot of Kaiser facilities around the area. Think I know about those places? The valley was my home for a long while, but the rent kept going up and up and up. It was getting too damn expensive, and there was not enough room. Too many people in the place. We had to go out to the Antelope Valley, and for 15 years, just struggled out there. My mother died in 2013. My brother passed away in 2018. All living out here in the Antelope Valley in the Iron Pit. I hate this place, but it worse is when the valley kept closing down different stores left and right and different shops left and right. When geologic natures destroyed different landmarks, and time took away people's lives left and right that I loved dearly and knew dearly. Either they moved away or they became another mortuary statistic. Hollywood Christmas parades became more and more impossible to go to because of the damn traffic out there. There was a small hamburger shop on La Brea behind a big building that was close to a mother's office. Worked on there. 616 North La Brea, Weston Letters. Used to be back in the 80s. This one hamburger shop had the best burgers I've ever tasted. Screw Carl's and Screw Burger King and McDonald's. Oh, that fun grilled taste I'll never outlive. But different places actually did have that one. Holiday Burgers at one time. Melanie Burgers. You see the Boulevard? Had that taste too. So I learned that different places actually have their own unique tastes. Honey Baked seemed to be the only shop in the whole of San Fernando Valley and throughout the Southern California region that had Honey Baked. Apparently the one out in Santa Clarita, or was it Valencia, got shut down. Oh, how about Foster's? It used to be on Sherman Way in Van Nuys, close to the Valley Hospital before it shut down and became something else. Not to mention Shakey's Pizza in Lancashire, in Chandler area. Egghead Software in Lancashire. How about the May Company with the Laurel Plaza? 94 took them out. May Company stood, rebuilt itself, robbed May, and then now it's rebuilding into something else. Valley Village with Sears Shopping Center. Woolworths down a bit. Hughes Shopping Center at the end, on the northern end. Zales Jewelry. There was also a Jewish deli and a pet shop in the area as well, not to mention a small coffee shop in the area as well. The tall Valley Bank building. always had his murals retouched. United Artist Theater. Saw movies over there. Saw The Empire Strikes Back in 1980 when it came out. Small Star Destroyer toy in my pocket. Fiddling around it in my pocket as I'm watching the actual Star Destroyer coming across the screen. My God. Yeah, I remember these things. I remember the old PSA air jets with the rear hatch, 3-engine design. I remember. Hollywood Burbank Airport, before it really had major changes happen to it. I remember that too. A lot of things in the valley I remembered. A lot of people I came across. Sherman Block, when he was still alive back in the 80s. Back in 88, 89, when he was still sheriff for LA County. Crossed my cashier area over Circuit City. A couple of years later, when I'm working over Universal Studios Hollywood, before they have all the stuff they've got right now. Hollywood Hornets. Oh yeah, that was great. Paula Poundstone came to my register. I was working at the Emporium. I was called a long time ago when they actually had it layout out there. It was nice to meet with her a couple of seconds. I love a comedian back then too. Well, before they actually had the city walk going, and before they actually had the amphitheater destroyed. And no, the pictures I keep seeing on Facebook don't give me those indications. It's the personal memories, it's the personal histories that you come across. See, I am a Valleyite. I'm a Valley dude. I grew up in that place, and I had to leave because of the damn prices and lack of places to rent. It forced a lot of people the hell away from there. No wonder they went over to Antelope Valley, and also the Kern, Bakersfield, and the surrounding communities. Some of them actually grew up in those desert regions. I remember there was a YMCA out in Sun Valley, Tahunga area, in a place called Camp 365, somewhere out in the Angeles National Forest, across a canyon from the Boy Scout area. Both places got torched by fires throughout the years. There was also another Boy Scout fort that overlooked the Antelope Valley and saw the floor littered with dust devils all over the place. A young kid, Camp Pack 152, Den 2 and Den 4. I was a bobcat, and the wolf, and the bear. Came damn close becoming a weeblo, but I had to move out of the area because they didn't have any Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts in Arleta. They just didn't believe in them. Didn't have them. As a young kid, kind of sucked because I enjoyed being in the Scouts. I enjoyed having fun. Yes, I remember that. I even remember Riverside Community Hospital. One was actually out there on Riverside. Across the street, my doctor used to have an office over there after he moved from North Hollywood to Riverside area. It actually had his office out there. Growing up as a teenager, it still became the place for me to scream. Across the street over at the Riverside Community Hospital, 2 or 3 times I was a patient over there. Had my elbow broken, and that was the first place. Second time, there was a car accident that happened in '76, moving from North Hollywood to Arleta. They stabilized me and brought me over to Children's Hospital. Tonight they actually had specialists going on strike. If it wasn't for a few specialists that broke ranks and actually helped me out over at Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, I wouldn't have been here in the first place. All those doctors too. Too much. Too much. So, you can't tell me that I'm not a native. You can't tell me I don't know Miasma Hot Rock. You can't tell me that I don't know what it's like to live in the damn valley. Oh, I know what traffic is like. That's why I never drove out there in the first place. I had a driver's training instructor named Van Hoos back in Kennedy days. Between 84 and 85 is when I actually took the driver's ed and then driver's training. It scared the living crap out of me. I survived. I had a certificate. I said I survived and had an instructor's permit. Driving permit for the damn thing, actually. This guy scared the hell out of our students. 2 boys and 2 girls. And he had the kind of controls that on his side, passenger side, he had accelerator and the brake. He didn't have to have the dual wheels. If you were going too damn slow, he hit the accelerator. You're going too damn fast, he hit the brake. And if you were not paying attention, he'd grab the damn wheel. Seatbelts were my constant companions. He scared the hell out of us. I didn't want to drive after that. My mother forced me to through Sears Auto training. The driving school that they used to have, you take your Sears account and you charge that and you make payments on the thing. Must have been about $100 or $200 for the whole thing. For about 1 or 2 weeks, I'm dealing with a driver's training instructor back in the late 80s, early 90s. Actually, it was about 88, 89. Yeah, 89. 89, 90 actually, during that time. I was living on Woodley at the time, sandwiched between Nordhoff and Parthenia. Danish farms, God rest their souls. Good place until the owners took the money and ran. Left people high and dry. I drove in the streets until I actually learned how to somewhat get comfortable. But it took a couple of incidents happened that said, screw the driving. I drive only when it's an emergency. I drive only when it was necessary, and I had to. Yeah, so I know what it's like. I know what the traffic in LA was like back then. I knew what the traffic in San Fernando Valley was like back then. I know what it was like to listen to 80s music like crazy, and some people just couldn't stand it. I also listened to the 70s and the 60s. A library over by Victor, actually, between Vano and the Victory. Library in the area, right by the freeway. So it was Van Owen. It was on the east side of it. In the parking lot, my brother and I would be listening to Charlie Daniels. The tape he put into his tape recorder. Across the street was the swimming pool facility. West side used to be a driving range. South side, southwest side. And it used to be a golf range. It actually used to be miniature golf, arcade, trampolines, and whatever they put them over there. Yeah, I remember the valley. I remember when they had Rocketdyne over on Canoga Avenue, that the only landmark that you knew you were in Woodland Hills, or close to it, or at least in Canoga Park, was a damn thruster from the space shuttle engine that they had outside of Rocketdyne. And then north off the street was another facility that they had of Rocketdyne, Rockwell. In Calabasas, they also actually had administrative offices out there. remember doing a temp assignment over there. It was pretty damn cool. Not to mention farmer markets they had out in the area too. Yeah, I remember the valley. How about anybody remember Organization for the Needs of the Elderly on Victory? No. Organization for the Needs of the Elderly was a facility that dealt with the disabled, not to mention the senior citizens all the time. They had one facility, Reseda Park, who dealt with feeding the seniors, and not to mention having activities, and not to mention the administrative office also actually had services rendered too. They were right by the Army, the National Guard facility, and a skate park as well. They were close to the railroad tracks. Got turned into the bus lanes for the Gray Line. Every Sunday they actually had farmers market. My mother worked there for a few years. My brother and I volunteered a few years over there in their farmers market. A gentleman named Harry, God rest his soul, and Stan, God rest his soul. They were the lifeblood of the place. My mother used to be an accountant working in their nonprofit facility. That was back in the 90s too, in the early to mid 90s. I miss it. They had some pretty damn good pomelos. There was a hot dog cart that a guy named Chuck was overcharging people for. For a can of soda and a dog, you're supposed to shell out $1.50, and sometimes he'd pocketed the profits until we nailed him on his ass for that one. My brother and I would run it every once in a while too. We also had Rocky Roasters over there too. He had a shop out in Canoga Park somewhere on Canoga Avenue. Well, it seems like all ambulance in the Kern County Fire Department are at it again in the neighborhood. But not out here, close by. There was a farmer out in Bakersfield. Actually out in Oxnard area. He brought over his pomelos, so crazy. The sweetest things you ever tasted. Looks like we're getting some activity. Anyway, I want to see what the hell's going on. So, later, guys.